Welcome back, alieNation. I have rebranded the podcast. We are now the Balancing Act. And my guest from episode 29, James, has accepted my invitation to be the podcast co-host. So we are moving into a new era of the podcast. I'm going to still count episodes. This will be episode 30, but I'll also kind of like denote it where it's like 30-1. Just something to kind of keep up with, the total amount of pods that have been done on this platform. And then, like I said, we're starting a new chapter with the Balancing Act. So, man, like I said, I just appreciate you coming on, being a co-host. I'm going to talk a lot on this podcast about what my plans are for the podcast itself, what I feel like you're going to bring to the table. But first, I want to hear basically what your opinion is about what you want to do with this. And also one thing that I just want to emphasize is make this me and you, man. Like I don't care if we have 5 listeners, like I want this to be my vibration and your vibration. And I'm doing this for me and for you and for anyone who wants to listen to me and you. And if I feel like at any point I'm going off and not being myself and I'm saying things to try to get other people to listen, I'm taking a break. And that's why you haven't heard a podcast from me in a couple of months, because one of the main reasons was on many podcasts I had talked about starting an organization that was all about connecting people in real life. And there was a certain point where I was listening to one of my podcasts and I was like, I felt really bad about myself, man. I was like, man, I feel like a fake. Like I have just been talking about this shit for 3 years now, man. My original idea started in July or August of 2018. And yes, it's evolved. And yes, I worked on it. But for the most part, I was procrastinating and bullshitting. And it just came a point where I was like, man, I really just need to do this. And I was even feeling weird about like doing the podcast because I just felt like I was talking shit and I wasn't really doing what I didn't feel like I could do it. I even thought about, and you know it because we've been talking back and forth. I thought about not doing the podcast anymore. Mm-hmm. But once I finally got this website created, www.hashtagnetwork.org, once I finally got this thing that it's been bubbling up inside of me for so long. Once I finally got that out, got it created, got it polished the way I kind of wanted to. It's still not a super professional looking website, but fuck it, I taught myself. I did that on Wix, which is like a template, kind of like Squarespace. I taught myself YouTube tutorial. I built that website on my own, and I'm fucking proud of it, man. And like, after doing that, it was like it removed a psychic block, where that psychic block was like keeping me from continuing doing the podcast because I was feeling like I was just all talk, man, and I wasn't doing it.
I think as I'm learning in life, that's the universe's way of just telling you, I really wanted you to go in this order. So you're feeling that frequency change, because let me tell you something. We're doing an amazing job with the direction you were going with where it was at before, I believe. But there is a bigger calling for what you're trying to do and what you want to do. And to get to that, I think you needed to do this first. And I know you needed to do that first because you're telling me and you're telling the audience that that's how you felt. So if that's how you feel, I think that's enough right there to let you know. And then when you did it, how did you feel after that?
I felt like, let's do a fucking podcast and talk about it. Because that's the Balancing Act, right? Because that's the 4 agreements. The first agreement is be impeccable with your word. I'm not trying to say that talking is like, I'm not trying to downplay the power of words, but when those words don't have actions behind them, they're empty words.
Right.
And so that's
I was just talking with my dad at dinner tonight, G, about that book that I regretfully have still not read yet, but the word magic book. I was just talking with my dad tonight at dinner about that. So it's funny that you bring that up, but I know what you mean and how you're feeling. But look at how you feel now after doing what you felt you wanted to do and needed to do, and it kind of cleared out that pipe of, okay, all right, now I feel organically back to want to do the pod because I think I never believed that you didn't want to do the pod. You just had something going on that you needed to get done. You
Yeah,
weren't you didn't feel forced to, oh, I got to try to do this and pull this together while I'm still not working on what it is that I've been saying that I want to get done. You
right.
were able to get that done and now proceed forward. And here we are today.
Absolutely, man. So that's basically another thing that I wanted to mention on this podcast is that this is never going to be like other podcasts, man. I'm not going to put out a podcast a week. I'm not going to have little intro songs or segments. And I appreciate that from other podcasts. But
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I realized in doing this is that when I started doing it, I did it. The reasons that I started doing it was I felt like I had a message that I wanted to put out there, and I didn't care who heard it and who didn't. And it wasn't about trying to grow my audience. It was just about I felt like I had something to say, and I wanted to put it, record it and put it out
Mm-hmm.
there. And regardless of what reaction I got, it was the act of doing it that made me feel good.
Right. Absolutely. And that goes to even what's happening now. Like, first of all, the amazing hat that you have on that you designed yourself for the brand. And we'll get into exactly what that is and what that means. But I just wanted to, while I had this in my head, you've got that hat on. You're in your oasis for where you like to work at. I don't have the brand on yet. I'm still in my dad's living room out here in the middle of the sticks. I'm working on my own he shed, my own man cave that's going to have a completely different look and feel to it for when we do these pods. So, let the audience know and let you know this is not the official setup. I still got some remodeling in here that needs to get done and everything, but this is rough, this is raw, this is just open and honest. This is sort of what my boy Montez Sweat pulled today that made national news because if you have any thinking for yourself then you speak for yourself these days, you get attacked. I'm sure we'll have time to get into that, but anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there too. But talk about that hat and talk about the brand, G. I mean, that's a slick that's a slick color scheme first of all, and that's that. And the logo, what does that mean? Go into that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go into it. I did want to finish my last point though.
Oh, yeah, of course.
As far as this podcast moving forward, I just want to emphasize to you and then also to myself when I go back and listen to this podcast, like I'm doing this for me, and I don't care
Mm-hmm.
if I have 5 listeners or 5 million listeners. Uh, I'm not. I'm never. Yeah, maybe eventually I get a production team that wants to, help me out, but I'm not worried about any of that right now.
Right, right.
I'm doing this because I feel like there are stories that I have to tell and experiences and ideas that I can share that can help people. And I'm not going to try to downplay. I don't. It's not like I don't want listeners, but I'm not chasing them. And I feel like that's the
Right.
paradox. That's the balancing act right there. Is if I'm doing it for me and I'm being real and I'm being myself and I'm not stressing about what do I need to talk about in order to get more people to listen, and I'm not worried about putting the podcast out every week, and I'm not worried about producing it and making it sound tight, and I'm just letting it be raw and letting it be me and letting it be real. That's when I feel like who cares if like I said, I don't care if I only have 5 listeners, but I also feel like if I'm being real, then those 5 people are gonna have a good impact on my life. Like that
Right,
it's gonna come back
right.
to me. We're gonna create a good relationship. They're gonna talk about the podcast with me. Another thing that I want to kind of emphasize before I go into the symbol of the hashtag is like, yes, I'm doing it for me, right? But I talk about the balancing act. Like, I definitely want listeners. I'm not going to just record it and then be the only person to ever listen to it, but I'm also doing it for you, right? You're the co-host, and I'm glad to have a co-host. The reason I invited you on is because I feel like if nothing else, we can grow with every episode of
Right.
our conversations.
But
Because
that's
we
where it all
already have these
started at too, G.
conversations anyway, so why
Yeah,
not record them?
yeah.
And if other
I
people
was
listen, that's just a bonus.
that's what I'm saying. That's it. The whole thing started from just the combos that we had personally, and realizing, wow, these are immersive
For this.
and needed combos, and we're having them. Why not put it on wax? Because one thing that our communities, I still like to call them our communities, and although I do know you're off of social media right now, I think I kind of consider myself a bit of a Twitter head, and specifically to the conspiracy community or whatever you want to call it. They have made some of the words that I used to like so much, like woke and conspiracy. They I barely like these words anymore, but
Painted.
just to label it for people so they'll know what and who I'm talking to. You know, it's still a it's still very much important to you, I know, in a lot of ways, and to me, and to be honest, to whether it's 5 listeners like you said or however many, it's topics and it's conversations that I have learned through those communities on there. They do exist, and there are people who like to have them. There are people who like to still think for themselves. There are people who like to do research. There are people who like to not flow the same stream as the masses, and that's where these forums are for, and that's why I appreciate them and I love them, and I'm happy to be a part of it. So thank you for having me. I say all that to say thank you for having me.
Absolutely. One other thing before I talk about the hashtag is, I talk about the 4 agreements a lot. I talk about Toltec wisdom a lot. That is obviously close to me, a big
Staple of your life. Yeah.
Yeah. But one thing that I'm not gonna talk about that as much. Like I actually thought for a time that I wanted to kind of talk about that more and like and explore that more on the podcast. But going back to what I was just talking about, the topic I was just talking about a minute ago, action versus talking. It's like I think another reason that I kind of had like I don't want to say a breakdown, but it was a moment of just like very like harsh self-discipline and like you're fucking up sort of thing, and it was like, dude, the reason you talk about the 4 agreements, the reason that you embrace the 4 agreements, the reason that it resonates with you so deeply is because you're the one that needs it, not other people. You follow the 4 agreements, you act on the 4 agreements, and other people will come to you and be like, hey, what is it that you do, because you seem to handle this crazy world pretty well. If I'm talking about it, then it's almost off-putting sometimes, especially when you talk about it too much. So as much as I embrace it, as much as I love it, I feel like I want to kind of not talk about it as much and just embrace it and live it, be about it, instead of talking about it, I want to be about it.
Put those special edition episodes in the archives, and you can dig them up when you're ready to, and that's what they're there for. They've been created, and you told me this when you were talking about switching gears here, and that's one part of what you were saying that I was like, you know what, I understand what he might be feeling and where he's coming from. It's like you created something special, I feel, with and I was a part of it, yes, but it was a lot of what you were bringing through Toltec wisdom and through a lot of the conversations that you were having, through the things that you have been reading and researching, and folks that you have been having on the podcast. That was still a special moment. Like, it was still a very special moment. And they exist, G. You get, like, regardless of how you feel about it now or what order you want to put it in.
So all the podcasts have been republished. All of the pods are republished.
Oh, are they?
In order, yeah, in order. All of them are republished. Yeah, I had taken some down, but yeah, I just put them all back up. Again, that was another thing where it was like,
republished in that manner. Yes, good. I was thinking you were saying something else, but no, good. It was a special moment, and there doesn't, however you feel is how you feel, but it was special, and it's there. And I think you're going to look back at it down the road, and when you feel better about them then, because you are living it and walking it and talking it, which I still think you were in a lot of ways, but I understand I understand where you're coming from, G. It's not about halfway, it's about all the way. I understand. It was some special pods though, man, and we got a lot of good feedback, and I think there was a lot of love for them. And if you know, you know, and um, it'll circle back somehow by itself organically one day, and people will appreciate it even more. I feel
Oh, we're getting Ben Stewart back on.
there was a quite. I think all of the features were brought something special. And I know I said this before. I think all of the features brought something different and special to the table. But Ben Stewart's was definitely a special time. And the content and the information and just the flow and the chemistry that you guys had of just chopping it up, you know? Because that's really what this is.
That audio is really not that great, but I just couldn't not publish it. It was too good.
If you want to make it work though, like I made it work. I cranked the speed. Remember, I was like, gee, I gotta crank the speakers up.
Got the audio now, so next time he's on, it'll be way.
Oh, it'll be yeah.
Better. And
yeah. But that's
gonna get him on again.
That one's going. Yeah, that one's a special edition one right there for sure.
Yeah, he's great. I love Ben. You know, people can say what they want about him. I don't agree with him 100% of the time, but I don't think he would appreciate it if I did. I think
who agrees with anybody 100% of the time?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's not about that. It's about
what he thinks. It's about the way he thinks.
Yes. I was just about to say before you said that, it's about your intentions. The conversation that I was having with the young lady before when I was still talking, you got on the phone. I think you heard me say, you know, it's about intentions. It's like, you know, we're looking at it both ways, you know, well, what about this? What about that? Look, these folks that govern the masses have never had good intentions. So you're not going to convince me that all of a sudden now they care so much to have good intentions. So it's about intentions.
But you never know, though. You never know. What if we really are at the precipice of a time where it's like they realize they're fucked and they're like, man, we better switch up our intentions or shit, or we're gonna get fucked. I'm not saying that that's the case. Don't get me wrong.
No. I understand. I'm just saying, do people,
just a thought experiment,
people that might also listen to this and think that too. Do you think that this was a good way of going about that? You know, this new turn of the. I mean, I do appreciate working from home now, so I guess they did think about some of us in that instance. But let's be real. I mean, mRNA jabs are look. I think you said this at one point, G. You said there's no point of even talking to me about this anymore. It's not.
Yeah.
I'm not 50-50 with this. This is well beyond that with that side of it. Right. You know, it's you can say whatever you want to. Oh, you're not, you know, you're being unbiased or not being biased, whatever the case is. It's like whatever. Do what you want to do.
Brought up to me. I do one of two things, depending on who I'm talking to. I'll lie and say that I got the vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can tell that they know I'm like a witty kind of smarter person and they're looking at me with that eye, like, I don't know if I believe you, then I'll be like, yeah, I got the Johnson & Johnson, you know, because it's one and done and it's not mRNA, which is kind of real, but I still didn't get it. It's a lie.
Yeah. I don't give a damn who made it and how many jabs it takes and who is claiming, oh, well, ours is better because ours, you know, doesn't have the mRNA in it. We just have the regular one. But the rest of those guys, they might. So, like, the whole thing to me sounds silly to even try to discuss anymore.
I agree. But I'm just saying, as far as dealing with real life and like
dealing with the masses, yes. Here's my thing about it. If you got a problem with me not answering your questions, go take it up with HIPAA.
That's okay.
So they the backwards ass folks who created the damn law to begin with, and now it's working against them the same way that the internet and social media is working against them. So you know what? Talk to HIPAA about it.
Yeah, that's an option I haven't used yet, but I have thought about it. But the other one is if I want to be a little bit more real and not just straight up lie to them, I'll be like, look, man, once they take responsibility for their products, you know, like once they're liable for any injuries or deaths, then maybe I'll consider getting it. but
Yeah.
I don't trust anything where you can't even take responsibility for what you're putting out there.
When have they ever taken responsibility for anything? Funny thing is, G, um, I've only had one person even ask me.
I've had a
I
few.
think it might have been, yeah, I think a lot of people in my family know where I stand with it. I'll make it very clear. But my dad's doctor asked me when I was taking my dad to a doctor's appointment one time. And I said, Doc, this is what I told him in the doctor's office. I said, Doc, me and you, we've been good for a long time. And I said, we're going to stay that way, but you're going to have to leave me alone about that. You know, we're not going to talk about that with me. Well, what do you mean? What are you saying? What do you mean? What do I mean? What am I saying? I'm saying we're good. Let's stay that way, and let's not talk about whether I got the vaccine or not. Like, no, I didn't. Even though I just answered your question for you. But regardless, I think my conversation with him and my reaction, he already knew at that point anyway.
Right.
But you're right. I might eventually have to find a more subtle way to do it. You want to know what my subtle way of doing it is? Well, I ain't gonna put it out here what my more subtle way of doing it is. Just know I'm not gonna have them issues unless people unless things really get out of hand, which I'm sure they will in the next 5 years, maybe even sooner, and they really can prove, you know, and that's a whole nother conversation that I'm sure we'll be having pods about that at some point too. But for now, the stage that we're in right now, it's you know, it's just kind of like, yeah, yeah, I got it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely I know you were talking to that girl about you said she got the vaccine simply because her job kind of pressured her into it. She
A
didn't
lot, unfortunately, a lot of people in the healthcare fields have
that's
no choice. It's the easiest industry to pull the, well, you work with patients who are sick, you have to do this, so we got to let you go. It's the easiest industry to pull that in, and it's unfortunate, but yeah, a lot of people obviously are going to opt to do that because they don't want to lose their job.
yeah, they're pretty open about saying that they're gonna use the private sector to enforce it because they know that there's too many problems with trying to enforce it.
Absolutely. And we're seeing it happen already. I had a guy on. I was listening to
So
sports talk
crush
radio.
small business, crush anybody that doesn't have.
I had a guy. There was a guy on sports talk radio today who said I regardless of what I think about it, and I don't want to force people to do it. The problem is that I run a business, and if somebody was to go get sick somewhere else and claim that they got it from my job, I am liable for, not creating a safe work environment. And then I can get sued and then I can lose my business. I can lose everything. So they are forced, even when they don't believe in it and doing it, they're forced to force their people to do it because of that. And these are the manipulative,
The business unless you get vaccinated and
which
pressure
is why
employees.
I encourage everyone to look into the e-commerce.
Yeah,
But anyway,
things are getting crazy. Like I'm gonna probably for real end up living with like an indigenous tribe, and let me tell you, a lot of them are getting vaccinated. A lot of them are brainwashed. You got to find the right ones.
well, yeah, true. I mean, look, man, there's a lot of elbows being rubbed out here, G. Even with, like you said, indigenous tribes, there are leaders out here who need resources and they need help. And there are people that are promising them those things if certain things get met. Okay. So you're right. You're absolutely right. You gotta watch. You gotta watch all of this. And you know, people are really gonna have to consider, even though the world is pushing everything this way anyway, and I don't know why more people wouldn't consider it, but people are going to really have to consider like e-commerce business because they're going to squeeze every industry eventually. And I just don't know what people are going to do I mean, and I know it hasn't happened yet because it hasn't happened yet, but the whole, oh, I'm walking in the grocery store every day regardless with no mask on, that's not going to fly forever, I don't think. I wanted to, but I just know, seeing how they operated after 2020, I know that they're willing to do whatever it takes
Yeah.
to do what they feel that they want to do. So it's going to be real interesting. Right now there was some rocky shores. We're on the boat. This was real rocky, and the sea has leveled out just a little bit. But it's always something brewing underground, and who knows what it'll be next. Probably something with our beloved crypto.
One thing I know you've probably heard this before, and I've heard it as somebody that's kind of been quote unquote conspiracy minded for over 10 years now.
Oh yeah.
When you bring up certain topics with people, you'll hear them say, is this really the cross you want to die on? Is this really that important? Basically is what they're saying. And I have to admit that's a really good point, because some of the things when you're talking about aliens, or I mean, that's just a silly one. I've never even thought about that being one that I would die on a cross on, but just more like one more that would be more realistic is like not paying my income tax. Is that really a cross you're willing to die on? And if I'm being real, it's like, yeah, maybe it's not until the movement grows a little bit bigger, and then there's other, I'm sure you can think of other examples like that, right?
I know what you're saying, and
when it comes to the vaccine, I think we've reached a point where for me it's like, this is a cross I'm willing to die on.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and I don't care what anybody thinks. Y'all can call me every name in the book, and I'm gonna put my middle finger up at you.
And doesn't it feel good not to give a fuck?
It really does, because it's like, I'm sorry if and then you hear their argument. Oh, well, you're willing to eat all this nasty food, and yes, but that's my liver and my kidney.
That is literally
something in my skin.
That is literally what the young lady I was talking to on the phone said. She said you're going to get the nanobots anyway, or mRNA from the chemtrails.
It's not about that.
It's not about that. I cannot control. And you know what I said? And you know what I said? I said, well, they better keep spraying it in the sky, because I'm not going to inject it.
I'm not injecting it. It is a hill I'm willing to die on. A hill, not a cross. I think it's a hill. Is that a hill you're willing? That's how the saying goes, anyway. But
I still to this day for the life of me
willing to die on. I don't care. It's my body, and if we're willing to give up our own body to a regulatory agency, don't even call them government, any regulatory agency, public, private, any. Like, listen, I understand how the real world works. I understand that there's a marketplace where other people's behaviors are going to influence you. And yes, you're not a completely autonomous being. We're all working together. It is an interbeing. There is something spiritual going on. But this is a hill I'm willing to die on, man. You're not injecting me. You're killing me before you're injecting me. Straight up. I don't care if I never go to another concert again. I don't care. Don Miguel, my favorite one. I mean, I talk about it on the podcast a million times. One of my favorite people in the world. He's holding an event this summer, and you either have to be vaccinated or, have a negative COVID test. Sorry, I'm not going. I don't care who you are. I don't care what it is.
Yeah, and the people, because Don Miguel, I thought was.
I didn't
think. G once again, they're probably making him have to take that stance, or he.
I don't know. I'm not going to make the assumption.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. At the end of the day, you got the right to do and say whatever you want to do and say for your.
It's about freedom and my choice.
Yeah, exactly. And going back to what we were just saying, it has nothing to do with how else they're going to deliver whatever they want to deliver to. That's fine, whatever. Yeah. But it ain't going to be willingly.
You can make fun of me any way you want. Like, oh, I'm this freedom flag waving, Candace Owens loving, Tucker Carlson, Fox News. Well, I'm not really any of that stuff. What I'm about is freedom. And
Yeah.
it's a spiritual thing for me. It
And,
comes
and we've talked about this before. They found a good way to group common sense and free thinking with a side.
right.
And when you act on that, they're going to pigeonhole you to. We've talked about this before, and I love every time I get to talk about it again, because there are certain things that I feel need to be harped on every time we talk. It just does, because
And
folks need to hear it. It needs to be a reminder, a daily reminder, that just because you think for yourself, or because you question things, or because you're not comfortable just giving up whatever, and just for their guise of safety and security, does not mean that you are a Trumper or a Vex or anti this or whatever. They're just grouping it. They group it all together. And simple-minded folk, I see them all the time on Twitter. Simple-minded folk will take something that you say and run with it and categorize you as this or as that,
yeah,
or
one of the
as
reasons I got off. I think and this is a topic I want to dive further into is I got off of all social media. As you know, I deleted my Twitter.
he did. It's true, people.
And
I want him to stay on Twitter, but
I'm off.
I
I'm off. I'm
understand.
never getting back on. Not Twitter. Listen, I'm not saying I'll never get on another social media platform again, but I want it. I want it to be a smaller one. I want it to be kind of a truth seeker centered
Yeah,
one.
and according to
Coming.
some research and readings that I've done, things are being worked on, because after the Trump fiasco and after a couple other people getting censored and blocked and banned, it's something coming. It's coming. It's being worked on. So hopefully, and I don't think it's going to be Parler and some of these other folks, because Parler wanted to be at the forefront of that, and somebody got in their ear, and they immediately was like, well, if we can't be in Apple's app store, then we're good here. So so it's going to take someone who just doesn't give a shit about that. And to be honest, I don't think it's going to happen until decentralized internet is like a thing, until
That's
it's like,
exactly where I was about to go with this. Is I don't even know. I don't know that I'll ever get on any social media platform again, unless you want to call the internet a social media platform, which I believe it is if we use it in the way that it was meant to be used, which is exactly what I've done recently, and that's created my own website. If you want to
right,
find me, you can come to my website.
right,
If you want to share my website on social media, I have no problem with that. I personally don't interact with social media well. It's addicting. I think anybody who's being real honest with themselves knows that it is
true,
a drug.
absolutely.
Uh,
And the algorithms know what to do to make you keep scrolling or come back. They do. They
and
do.
all of this comes back to something that I meant to get to earlier in this, and that's I'm trying to localize everything in my life, whether
Right.
it's this hashtag network organization. I'm just trying to be real with myself, be centered with myself, and I feel like if I'm truly being real with myself and being real with myself, there is it to the most raw extent possible, then that will uh, extend out. It will show exteriorly if I'm being real interiorly. And so, one of the reasons I got off Twitter is like, this podcast isn't for the Twitterverse. Don't get me wrong. Anybody from the Twitterverse that ends up listening because you share it, or anybody else shares it, or anybody shares it on Facebook or Instagram or any of these other platforms that I'm no longer on, I appreciate that. And I appreciate that you like this podcast enough that you feel like you want to share it on your page. I'm not hating on that. I'm saying for me personally, um, I've never been in a good relationship with social media. And
Yeah,
I
and
think
that's true. And I can contest to that. You haven't been. You haven't been. You've been on and off it. It's been, I know, but
and
you
every
gave it
time
a
I'm on, it's I think a lot of it comes from having this conspiracy minded perspective on things. It's like no one actually feels what I'm saying. They see the things that I'm saying, and it's always their mind takes it to a dark place because they don't see where my heart is. They don't hear the vibration of what I'm trying to get across with that message. And I think that um the reason I'm willing to podcast is because at least you can hear my voice. At least you can hear my intonation. At least there's a little bit more there as far as the complete message. But I don't think that anything beats face-to-face presence, body language. I think that personally for me, I do my best communicating when I'm with somebody. I'm able to get a message across to another person when they can actually feel what I'm saying.
Right.
And so, man, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, I was on all of them for a time. Facebook was the first one that I was ever on. Was on there for a while and out saying,
I bet you had a time and a half getting rid of that profile because they don't let you go.
well, I technically still have a Facebook. Still have a Facebook, but I honestly, truly never use it. You can get on there.
Yeah, I don't use it. I tried to get off of that thing one time and it was like leaving the country, G.
And then there's so many other websites where it's like so easy to log in with Facebook. And there are a few people in my life that the only way I know how to contact them is through Messenger. So
Yeah.
the reason that I have a profile, even though I never use it, is because I do use
Yeah.
Messenger to talk to a few people.
Yeah. Yeah.
But even then, that's a messenger. That's like, even though it's a text or whatever and it's over the phone, it's still personal.
Right.
It's not like posting something for the whole world to see. And especially when you say controversial things like I do, sometimes that shit just gets it won't feeling right for me anymore, man. And
I feel you.
The way that my worldview hasn't changed a whole lot. I still think that a lot of what people call conspiracy thought or theory or whatever, I think there's a lot of truth to it. But I'm just trying to live in unconditional love, and
Yeah.
I really have begun to see these international bankers and the technocrats and the deep state, whatever you want to call them. I'm living, what did Absol say? We're living in a different dimension. I forget the exact line, but I'm in a different realm. And that's where I'm truly living in a different realm at this point, where it's like, I don't even have the time to hate on these people. Like, I'm not jealous of them. Like, they need to grow up spiritually. They're behind me. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I hope that they can be as rich as me one day in spirit, in heart, because I don't give a fuck about any of that shit. None of this is all this material. This is like a beach. I'm playing in the sand. None of this is mine. All this stuff that they call mine, it's just an agreement. My house, my car, all of that is agreements. It's not really mine. That's the death. That's God's. It's life. Whatever you want to call the force.
Right.
Yeah, it's divine, but I don't want to get too deep into that stuff. I'm just saying that when it comes to that conspiracy stuff, I'm not tripping on these people because it's not even about hating them or like trying to teach them a lesson or revenge or jealousy. None of that. Like, I actually have found love for these people, and I've seen that they're just lost, bro. They're just lost, and like, I don't see a resolution coming from fighting them or exposing them or talking negatively about them, trying to get them in jail or what, like, all of that shit has got to go. We've just got to get a little bit. I mean, there does need to be some sort of repercussion, but I think we need to be real about the cards that they hold too.
Yeah. There's that too.
And I think that's what they're waiting for. They're waiting for us to get real about, we do hold some cards here, and there's a reason we hold the cards, because we were scared little bitches, and now we have to hold these cards until someone like me, and I'm not saying that in an egotistical way, but somebody who thinks in such a way as where it's like, I don't really fuck with you, but I also understand the reality of the situation, and I do see myself as kind of better than you in the sense that I can enjoy life without, I don't need $1 million in my bank account to take a deep breath. You know what I mean? Like, they're so scared and they're so worried about everything, they can't even live. You know what I mean? And scared of being exposed or whatever. I'm not even worried about any of that stuff anymore. I'm really trying to root myself in unconditional love. And I recognize that, you can't expend that unconditional love on people who aren't going to reciprocate it 100%
Yeah,
of
that's
the
true.
time. But when you find
Right.
yourself in a situation where you are with somebody who's not going to reciprocate it, you still keep yourself in check and show respect and show love. Like, you don't have to be giving them all of your energy, but you don't have to be hating on them. You don't have to be jealous. You don't have to be thinking this is a bad person. You can just be content and understand that that's their shit. They got to deal with that, you know?
Right. Right. Yeah, true. I'm trying to get there.
I know.
I
I
mean,
know. I get it.
I am there in a lot of ways,
Well,
obviously.
there's a balancing to it. That's the whole point of calling this the balancing act, because it's like I understand
Exactly.
the anger, because
Exactly.
if you've been oppressed, or not even oppressed, if you've lived a life where they have made it more difficult for you to just be, for you to meet your necessities, food, shelter, what you understand what I'm getting at here.
Of course I do. Yes.
So I understand
And
the angst or the resentment.
yeah. And it's
Productive.
my outlook on it is there's always going to be a way to push forward for them to push forward with these things, these tactics, these methods, these things. So it's like, yeah, I want to sit back and not either, but what how much does the bear need to be poked before okay, I thought 2020 was it, but clearly it's not. So that just means, okay, well, we can raise the bar. We can go just a little bit farther now. You know, we we got them past that, and nothing terrible happened because most of the shit that was shown to be terrible was manufactured anyway. So okay, now that we got them to a state in which they literally won't do anything, what can we do now? You know. So as much as I do understand that, just like I understand, I think we were talking about it the other time, G, when we were when the like conspiracy, shout out to conspiracy, was talking about like how, man, I don't want to talk about the dark side of conspiracy anymore because it gets people. Well, I understand that, but there still are millions of kids missing, and we still should care about that a little bit. You see what I'm saying? It's like,
Get up the darkness. Very simple.
like they want us to like get tired of talking about it and stop talking about it. And I'm starting to hear that be more of a, well, I don't know if I'm starting to hear it be more of a thing, but I'm just saying I don't think I'm the one who's going to rest on some of these topics right now because nothing's changed just because because Epstein's name is not in the news anymore, and who knows if that's even the biggest. There's so many other
But
pieces of that.
here's the other side of that. And I know I'm not on Twitter anymore, but I was on Twitter long enough to know that there's the whole argument where that whole thing is a psyop. I don't believe that. I think
And it and it and here
there's a
it
psyop
very
that's overblown on purpose, and that's the psyop. And then there is
that's
balance, right? That's the
that's
title of this podcast.
that's yes, but what does that do, G? That causes folks, brothers like brother conspiracy and other folks to say, man, they had me out here looking stupid, so I ain't talking about this no more. It's like, nah, bruh, you talking about the right thing. It's just that, yes, it probably was a psyop. Maybe it wasn't. At the end of the day, questions still need to be answered about where these kids are dismissing every day. People
And I
don't
think
just
a position that I'm holding more and more often is just I don't know. I don't know. You know,
exactly.
and it's but
Exactly.
what we were
I
just
don't
talking
know.
about reminds me of
But I also think folks like our minds are not people like us aren't created here to just be like, well, now that we got duped by that too, yeah, screw it. I guess I'm just gonna go off and be more tame now and more
no, I think there's certainly something to it. I agree with you. I think there's something to it. But what I wanted to say is it's analogous. It kind of reminds me of what I've heard from what I would consider. I'm not a flat earther. I'm not there yet anyway. I believe that the world is holographic, so it could be flat or or whatever
You
shape.
know, that's a good point. I don't know what I believe in that yet, G, but I do think that we are not paying enough. One thing I will say about that, and then I'll let you finish your thought. I don't. I still don't know where I stand on that. I just know that we don't know the truth to a lot of things, and they hold a lot of truth cards. So I'm sure there's something to that. And I personally, I don't think we're paying enough attention to what's going on underground. I think there's more happening underground than there is anything up here. I mean, I think there's grids and satellites and all sorts of things going on up there, but I think a lot of operational stuff is happening underground. And there's been some proof to that too. So there's that. But or what I consider to be proof, based off of things that have leaked and come out in military programs and this, that, and the third. But anyway,
There are
um,
definitely deep underground military bases. That's a fact.
I think there are deep underground cities. I think there are worlds like this up here that exist underground
I
with
think
resources and cities
you're right.
and all sorts of shit. And I think that there are people born into those entities that don't even know about up here, just like we don't even really know about down there. They're down there having stories with their peers about, hey man, we're hearing it's space up there. You know, it's all and it's us. You know, and we're sitting here doing the same thing, like, oh, we're
Well, I've heard theories. I've heard theories that there's levels to it. There's like 7 different levels of. I mean, there's all these different.
There's
Theories.
all exactly. I love. I will never. I don't think I will ever stop loving to explore them though, because how can you look at the blue screen upstairs and not ask questions and not be curious?
Right.
How can you read the reports of these underground cities and not let your imagination run wild? God didn't we're not robots as much as they want us to be robots. Okay. So we can't operate like them. We're going to be curious. We're curious beings where we want to learn and explore and know and ask questions and dig and and that's what we're going to do when all of these things, it's like it's even more like immersive to me as far as like wondering about things and reading and researching. And oh well, why don't you just go to science and science will tell you? It's like, bruh, if that was the case, then there would not be 50 million opinions on everything.
Right.
It's not as simple as just, oh,
oh,
the scientist from Harvard comes out and says this, so that's what it is. Nah, it's not.
right. Right.
Because the same person that believes in that scientist, there was ancient philosophers that can explain their stuff their way, and it makes sense too. So it's like, who's right, who's wrong about a lot of things. Very true. But that doesn't mean that the questions need to stop. That doesn't mean that the curiosity and the nature of things need to stop being asked and probed and sought after. Because when we stop doing that, that's when we're no longer human.
No, I'm 100% with you. Where I was going with that, the pedophilia thing, I kind of related a little bit to the flat Earth thing, because I'm not, again, I don't want to say I believe in the flat Earth, but I don't think that we're being told the truth about the shape of our planet, or where we live, or what it is, what this reality really is. What constitutes this reality. Um, and when it comes to these sorts of topics, what they'll do is they'll put something bizarre out there to discredit it. Yep. When the truth is actually somewhere between the bizarre story that contains some truth to get people like us to look into it, and then they can call us crazy for looking into it. But then there's some truth there because they need some truth in there in order to have that credibility to hook us in. And then we're hooked in.
So you're saying it's like a balancing act.
Right, exactly, right. So that's again, everything comes down to the balance. But
yeah, I had to do that one there.
Well, but that's what I'm saying is I feel like there is something about the flat Earth. Maybe it's not flat, but there is something to the fact that we perceive it as flat, right? And I don't think we're on a spherical ball floating through space. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe we are, but I don't. My intuition doesn't. My gut says
No,
it might not be this flat Earth with a freaking ice wall around it. It's probably not that. I don't. My intuition says it's probably not that either.
these are
But
the same folks that are obsessed with secret societies and cabals and hiding things
and
under.
I mean, we talk about observation, right? We talked about it on. Actually, no. Here's the thing. So I do want to talk a little bit about this. So I had recorded an episode with Conspiracy, and I was going to be his 47th episode. But on that podcast, number one, I talked about my podcast a lot. And then I went through that kind of period where I thought I wasn't going to podcast anymore. So I hit Chris up and I was like, you might want to record another episode because we talked about me podcasting a lot. And I don't even know that I'm going to do the podcast anymore. So I was happy that he did put out another episode, episode 47 recently. And I thought that the episode that he put out was actually much better than the one we recorded. But I do remember I'm going to ask him for I want you to ask him for that audio recording because
Okay.
there is a part in there. I don't know that I'll ever use the whole podcast, and ultimately it's up to him. If he wants to use it, it was for his podcast. So if he wants to use it, he's got first dibs. But there's a clip in there that I was really happy about where I talk about the double slit experiment. And I know I've talked to you about
Oh yeah.
before.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, when it comes to these discussions about the nature of reality and what people call science, it's funny because the double slit experiment proves that the way that you look at something actually affects the outcome of how it manifests. Right. So the double slit experiment, what it is it was pretty much the experiment that introduced humanity to the quantum world or quantum phenomena. And what they did was they were trying to figure out whether light itself was a wave or a particle. And so they took electrons, which are tiny bits of matter, tiny bits of the atoms, right? Which supposedly are what creates light. And they shot them through interference pattern that either had one slit or two slits. And then there was basically a wall where they would record how it hit the wall, the impact wall. And so, like, for example, when you send marbles through the interference pattern, when it hits the back wall, you'll either see one slit where the marbles went through the slit, or you'll see two slits if there was two slits in the interference pattern where the marbles went through, right? But if you were to set up the same experiment with water, something that acts like a wave, and you were to somehow get the water completely still in the experiment, and then push the water from the direction of where you were shooting the marbles through the interference, if you have one slit, then there's going to be a wave right where the water goes through that one slit, and it's going to have like a peak right in the middle. Well, if you have two slits, this is where it gets interesting because a wave doesn't have just two slits on the back wall when you have two slits, because two waves are going to form when it passes through the slits. And then those waves in between the interference pattern and the impact wall are going to bounce off of each other and bounce off of the side walls. So by the time the wave reaches the impact wall, you've got what's more like a zebra pattern or a stripe pattern.
And when you say slit, you mean literally like a slit?
Yep, there's a wall and they cut slits in the wall.
Okay, gotcha.
The marbles or the water to pass through.
Right, gotcha.
Right. So they take the experiment to the quantum level, or to the level of let's figure out what light is. And so they shine light with one slit, and you know, whether it's a wave or a particle, boom, you're going to get the one bar where the light is passing through right in the
passing middle. Through, right.
So the double slit is where they're going to find out whether it's a wave or a particle. Well, they do the double slit and it looks like a wave. They're like, okay, but maybe what's happening is these electrons are actually particles, but there's so many of them that they're bouncing off each other and acting like a wave. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this experiment to the microscopic / quantum level, and we're going to shoot one electron at a time through the interference pattern, and then record what the impact wall looks like. So they, shoot the electrons through the one slit, and of course it forms the one slit in the middle. Then they start shooting them one at a time through both slits. And at first it seemed like it was just forming a double slit pattern like marbles would. But after a long time of doing this, it ended up just like a wave pattern where it was a stripe across the impact wall. And they're like, how is this happening? We're shooting one at a time
Right.
through two slits, and yet the result is like a wave pattern.
Right.
So they're like, we got to figure out what's going on here. So they put a measuring device right at the interference wall to see the behavior of the particle as it passes through the interference through the interference wall. When they did that, the result changed. The behavior of the electrons acted different, as if they knew they were being watched. So the act of observing reality based on what you believe you're going to see actually manifests. Scientifically proven. They want to talk about science all the time, but they don't ever talk about the double slit experiment.
Right. Interesting. So I need to dive in more to that too myself. That's interesting because what I have realized about these science arguments is I to go to war with a lot of these science folks. Not, and what I mean by science folks, I mean the people that just live and die by science. You got to fight them with science. We're not fight them, but you gotta present them with scientific things to kind of show because there are plenty of scientific experiments that have been done that do actually align with truth. You know, it's just they I guess they picked a handful that don't, or
But what did
science
DOD say? They don't want the facts, just the convenient ones.
the convenient ones, right? Right, and obviously, I mean, of course they would, but that is one right there. That's interesting.
Yep.
That would be interesting to to use as a rebuttal when you're talking with a science person, because I swear you see it all the time on in social media and a lot of other forums, but you know, it's like the person's only argument is, well, science says this, or science. Like it's just so intriguing. I feel like Elements was so, it wasn't that that I feel it was so ahead of its time, but it did, like Bob did a great job of touching on things that I feel are more prevalent now, like the way people act and talk and this, that, and the third. It's like it's even more now. So the fact that he made it when he made it seems as if it was ahead of its time, but in reality, I'm sure it's been the battle a long time. It's just been this use the lazy science to cover everything and end all should happen and whatever the case may be. But in reality, I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out there because it just makes me always think of the song "Science" by Bob.
Fucking science, bro.
Fucking science, bro.
Yeah, you can cut your video off just because I think the internet's kind of being a little glitchy. So we'll just we'll kind of wrap it up here in a minute.
Okay, yeah, I'll get all right.
For the rest of it, but
couple
yeah, man, did you have anything else? I mean, I really just kind of wanted to touch on, I did want to wrap up the point about like I said, I did record a podcast with Conspiracy. One of the things that happened is I was kind of talking about how I was excited about us getting a big name, a big guest on for our first episode, and when that didn't pan out, I was a little bummed out, man. So I pretty much I did tell Chris, like, don't even, go ahead and record another episode. And I'm glad he did, because I think what he put out was better than what we recorded. But I also think that there were some clips of what was recorded between him and I that are, it might only be 5 or 10 minutes at a time, but there's 2 or 3, 5-10 minute chunks that are really awesome. So reach out to him and see if he's willing to give you that audio file, and I might chop
Yeah,
it
man.
a little bit.
He got back to me. I don't think I sent this one to you like I sent the human vibration one, but he got back to me and he hearted it, man. I mean, I think everyone understands. Everyone understands, but I think they also I think people really appreciated your because you don't know anybody until you get on a mic and you talk with them. You kind of they didn't know you from Adam and Eve. They took the chance, and I think that after each of these individuals got a chance to do a pod with you, they saw and they realized and appreciated your contribution to the community. And when I sent that message to them that you wanted me to send to them, they had nothing but love and positive feedback on it. And that's one thing one thing I love about the community is a lot of them just seem human and down to earth, and we're all in on this, even if we have different elements and different little pieces of what we like to focus our attention on. At the end of the day, we all have a common goal of just trying to educate each other and trying to make our way through the storm together. So
And create a better story for humanity. Ultimately,
yeah,
that's a huge goal, but at the end of the day, like, why not have big goals? One life to live.
right, 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 absolutely. No, that's really all I have to add tonight until probably we do another one, and I have more of a direction of where I'm going and things that I really want to harp on. But no, man, it's been good. It's been good, kind of cracking the ice on the rebrand, and there's a lot of things coming, I'm sure, with just some of the branding, with your brand that we'll be rocking and wearing, and better backups for better backdrop for me, and some of those things are coming soon.
Hell yeah, yeah, man. I think, like I said, this has definitely been a raw episode, but at the same time, I don't care anymore. I'm going for
Right.
what feels like me. And
Our raw rants when I was still living in Arlington, G, are really what sparked a lot of this. Anyway, they were some of the best rants and conversations and discussions that we've had. Is just ones where I've been like, gee, like
gotta record this.
I've got to, yeah, I've got to call you and talk to you about something. And at the end of it all, it would be like an hour and a half, and we're like, damn, we had an episode right there. Damn.
That was a podcast episode right there. What the fuck are we doing? Let's do it. And that's
Yeah,
another thing. That's what I'm gonna name this podcast. Stop talking about it. Start being about it.
yeah. There you go.
Because and that's the balancing act, right? Because obviously this is a podcast, so we're talking about it, but I'm not going to talk about things that I'm not doing. And so that's the balance, is like, I couldn't even record this until I did what I needed to do, which was
There,
create the
there
organization
you
I've
go.
been talking about creating for too long. I just had to do it. And so anybody who's listening, please check it out: www.hashtagnetwork.org. You spell it out: HASHTAG network.org. You got a couple short videos of me kind of just explaining what I'm trying to do with the organization. And then there's a couple of TED Talks from Johan Hari, which really goes deeper into the why and the motivation and the inspiration and the 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 facts of the matter that moved me to create this organization that I truly in my heart feel like is going to be a big success. This podcast, like, I like doing it, but I feel like at this point, I'm kind of like using the podcast to try to plug this organization. And this is really, that's my purpose, man. I feel, like I said, I couldn't even do this podcast until that was done.
Right.
So that's just where I'm at, man. I wanted to just get on here, spit some shit, be raw about it, not give a fuck about whether I have an intro song or fucking artwork on my podcast or fucking segments or whatever. Like, fuck all that. That's not me. I'm just raw, and I'm gonna attract the people that want to listen, and that's a bonus, because ultimately I'm just doing it for me and you and anybody who feels like they gain something from it, like they're moved by it, or like they just appreciate what I'm bringing to the table as far as my energy, like not even just my words, but the energy behind my words, and the full message, the whole message, you know, not just the words themselves, but the intention, like you talk about.
Yes, sir.
Awesome, man. Well, that was a great first episode of the Balancing Act. I'm gonna get to editing it, and have a good night, my brother.
You too, brother. Love you, man.
Peace. Love you too, man.